We're taking a look at some of the activity in the crypto space because I think really Bitcoin grabs all of the attention really following the US election. You take a look at some of the gains though we've had across the landscape and Bitcoin's risen around 46 or 47%, but that line in white there is Cardano, which has actually far outpaced it. It's a gain of nearly 100% since the vote back in early November. So the reason for that, of course, we know Doge, for instance, has really risen. That's the Elon Musk link. The reason Cardano perhaps is rising, or one of the factors being attributed to it, is because the founder of the token, Charles Hoskinson, reports speculation in the markets. Perhaps he's having close talks with some U.S. lawmakers.
Might play a role.
May play a role. We want to speak with him now. Charles Hoskinson, co-founder and CEO of Input Output, and as we said, the founder of the public blockchain platform Cardano. And Charles, we want to get started with these talks. I know you had an Ask Me Anything session the other day, saying that you'd had these discussions ongoing. Talk us through exactly what those discussions look like, and who are you speaking to in particular?
Well, there's a lot of things going on right now. It's anytime there's a presidential transition, it's a very complex affair. And actually, the Treasury Secretary has yet to be selected, and they're kind of winnowing down. So that sets all crypto policy. So right now, most of the discussions are with the legislative branch. I'm having dinner tomorrow with Senator Scott, and I've talked to numerous senators who are in the banking sector, basically figuring out how the regulation is going to work. And we've had some discussions with people transition team about what they want to do with a crypto committee, and if it's going to be a czar or if it's a commission, and what exact powers and how exactly does that work. And it's not exactly clear in how it's set up on the executive side, but on the legislative side, it's very clear what they want is to pass a law. So there were several attempts already in 2023. Fit 21 was the most successful, which passed the House, but it did not enter the Senate. And in the Senate, there was a bill in 2022 called FIA that was by Senator Lummis and Senator Gillibrand. So right now, there's some reconciliation of what does the executive branch want, what does the legislative branch want. What we've been told by the executive branch is Trump has a mandate that he wants America to be the #1 place to found and run a cryptocurrency business. There were also several campaign promises they're trying to connect to. For example, the strategic reserve for Bitcoin concept that also Senator Lummis is a big fan of. And there's a lot of things around asset classification that have to get resolved. The security commodity debate and what power should be reserved for the CFTC and the SEC. So it's still very early days, and we'll know a lot more in 60 to 90 days about how much level of broad industry participation is going to occur at the executive branch side. But we're already in talks with many people on the legislative side, and they're going to move forward as a co-equal branch of government with or without the executive branch to pass a law.
Yeah, Charles, David here, just to maybe pick up on that too, is there a sense from the senators that you're speaking with that this time around there will be support to get this enshrined into law, not so much, say, an executive order, which we all know, of course, the former might have more lasting power than the latter?
Yeah, the challenge is not will the law get passed. I think there's a very high probability that that's going to occur. The challenge is what is the scope of it? Is it strictly going to live within the auspices of asset classification, or are they going to be more ambitious and talk about custody, taxes, stable coins, the strategic reserve, the DeFi stuff, the rules for custodial wallets and non-custodial wallets? There's a broad room of things that cryptocurrencies can touch, and the more ambitious you are, the more you can get done. But the problem is the higher the probability it gets jammed up through either some administrative issue, or it just doesn't simply pass committee in the lawmaking process. So I think there's a very strong bet that we're going to resolve the is it a security or not a security issue in 2025 and kind of rein in what's been happening over the last 3 years. It's a little bit more milky when we start talking about complicated things like DeFi, because less and less of the cryptocurrency companies are directly involved in that. And also Wall Street has very strong opinions on these types of things, because in some cases it competes with pre-existing businesses, and it's not clear how to regulate these in a decentralized way. So that's why a commission is helpful, because you can establish a baseline across the entire industry of where have people run into problems. And also you can have that question of normalizing US regulation with international standards like MiCA in Europe, or the ADGM in Abu Dhabi, or what the JFSA has done in Japan. And it's very important that you don't develop U.S. regulation in a sandbox, because cryptocurrencies are intrinsically global. Many cryptocurrency companies, mine included, have employees in dozens of countries. We obviously have lots of users, and Cardano in particular has over 100 countries. Ethereum and Bitcoin are even more. So you can't just think in a U.S.-oriented approach. You have to ask, well, how will these be interoperable with each other? So only through the executive branch can we get that level of international coordination. And then the lawmakers are here to serve, and they're very cooperative with the Trump administration, with the upcoming House and Senate. So I don't think there's going to be an issue getting a law through. It's just a question of how ambitious does that law need to be.
So you're saying that there's going to be some sort of commission established for this? I mean, you talk about sort of what's happened in the last few years, and I think many people would look to that regulation through enforcement actions, which of course comes down to the leadership perhaps of Gary Gensler at the SEC. There's talks of him being replaced. Who do you think is most likely to replace him? And is it the SEC that ends up regulating the vast enterprise of the crypto landscape?
So first off, it's hard to pick a commission or even talk about a concept of, is it a czar, is it a commission, is it a series of recommendations, until the Treasury Secretary has been selected. That's kind of the big thing, because there's some deference to that role, because they're the primary oversight body of all the agencies that we've had problems with historically. Second is the question of, should the Treasury Department decide that, or should it be directly decided by the president? And these are some of the discussions I think are ongoing. And if there was a czar, I would advocate a gentleman like Brian Armstrong, for example, to be that person, and then to build a subcommittee structure where subcommittees basically sit under by topic. So you have the stablecoins, the exchanges, DeFi, and these types of things. But again, it's very early days. And so I think it's probably going to get resolved within about 60 to 90 days. As for the question of the SEC, technically Gary Gensler doesn't have to resign. Although there's a precedent that when a new president's elected from opposing party, the chairman does resign, or at least offer that resignation for the president to have the ability to pick a replacement. And that's what we saw with Jay Clayton, for example, Gensler's predecessor. And if Gensler follows tradition, he should do that. As for who replaces him, that's a complicated affair, because the most qualified people also potentially have a bit of conflict of interest because they hold crypto and they're in the cryptocurrency market. And there's a lot of other things that are beyond crypto that are going to be considered with the chair. As you know, Gensler's also had some attempts to weaponize the SEC for environmental policy and other things outside of the scope of crypto. So the grievances go far beyond our industry in terms of the conduct there. So ultimately, these are conversations that would have to be held with the incoming Treasury Secretary and Trump's people, and they're far beyond my pay grade. I have no idea where they're going.
Far beyond your pay grade. All right, Charles, I hope to speak with you again, because I know also you were saying this next 60 to 90 days is going to be really critical for seeing how everything comes together. But that was Charles Hoskinson there, co-founder and CEO of Input Output, and we'll have plenty more ahead. This is Bloomberg.